end of your very special school safari. Can you believe what we have here? A whole lot of lions. Now, my name is James Henry, and on camera today is Sebastian, and we have got another special friend with us, and his name is Ronald, and he's a little robot, and he's going to try and see if he can get a nice close tortoise eye view of these magnificent lions. These lions are called the Nkuhuma Pride, and they're named after a tree that we get in this area called a brown ivory tree. They're a very famous pride of lions, this down here in the woodlands of South Africa, and they've been sitting here in the shade all day long because it's so very hot here. Tyan, you're wondering if lions have a king. Well, they do sort of. Now, I wonder if you're not asking that because you've seen the Lion King movie. Well, it's a little bit like that, but not quite. There are 4 kings in this area, 4 male lions that dominate or rule over this area, and they have got 2 prides. This pride of lions called the Nkuhumas, and another pride of lions called the Styx Pride. And those are the prides that our 4 kings, who we call the Birmingham Boys, that's what we call our male lion kings, those are the 2 prides that they call their own. And all of these little lions that you're looking at in front of you, those ones there are about a year old, they are all the sons and daughters of the Birmingham Boys, or our 4 kings that we have over here. But we won't see them here today because they don't always spend time with this pride. Now, Sincere, you are asking how on earth these lions survive in the wild. Well, you know, they're very good at hunting. That's what they do. And so what they have to do when they're hungry, which is probably every 2 to 3 days or so, they must hunt something. They will catch an antelope like an impala, or this pride, because it's a big pride now, there are about 11 lions in this pride, they will hunt something enormous like a buffalo. And without that ability to hunt, well, then they wouldn't have anything to eat. And in fact, 2 of them the other day hid and ate a zebra. Just 2 of them and 1 little cub managed to catch a zebra, and the rest of them didn't even know about it. Can you believe it? Sometimes lions are not very nice to each other, and they don't share so well. Now, Grant, you're obviously very interested in animals, and you say, how many cubs can a lion mum have? Well, a lioness can have around about 4 cubs at a time, sometimes as many as 6, sometimes as few as 2. So sometimes 3, sometimes 2, sometimes up to 6. Normally somewhere around 3 or 4 cubs. Here we are with the Nkuhuma Pride, everybody. We've had some pretty dodgy signal in this area. And anyway, the Pride, as you can see, is doing a huge amount of not a lot. Now, in case you missed it, please do talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Otherwise, you can chat to us using the YouTube chat stream. It would be marvellous to hear from you. At least there is a little bit of action at these lions. My telephone thinks I want to ask it a question, which I most assuredly do not. Anyway, this is the full Nkuhuma Pride, and I haven't seen them for a very, very long time. And also just to remind you, of course, that it is in fact Sebastian Rombi's birthday today. Happy birthday, Sebastian. 36 years of him. Can you believe it? On the back of this car. Doesn't look a day older than 18.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're getting many happy birthdays from the final control room, which is very nice. I think they all look pretty well fed, actually. Of course, 2 of them selfishly devoured a zebra the other day with the littlest cub. And I've failed thus far to see the second little cub. There's the first one there, trying to still get a bit of milk. Probably pushing the age where milk is not really so much a good idea anymore. But I think that the other little one, and as far as I'm aware there were two, she's died. Scarlett, interestingly they don't, and I really like this question because I think it's quite an important one. You say, do lions have a strong smell? Scarlett, they don't have a strong smell. In fact, none of the big cats that I've spent any time with have a strong smell at all. Hyenas can smell pretty rank at times. Wild dogs absolutely hum. But lions don't, and nor do leopards, and nor do cheetah. Now, you will read in some fairly unreferenced sort of guiding textbooks, if you like, that lions will hunt into the wind. I have yet to see that, and in much more reliable texts that are actually based on data, they make mention of the fact that lions very seldom actually seem to take heed of the wind when they go hunting. Now, the two subjects are interlinked, because what I think they mean is that lions and leopards and cheetahs spend such a long time cleaning themselves, I think, to negate the smell on their bodies. Hyenas and wild dogs, which have a completely different hunting strategy, do not. Wild dogs are coursing predators. They walk through or trot through the woodlands or through the grasslands until they spot prey, and then they just give chase. There's no stealth involved in it. Lions, on the other hand, and leopards, will move through the woodlands, and they're ambush predators. So they do their level best to try and stay undetected. And I think one of the very clever ways that they do that is to clean themselves fastidiously, and in so doing reduce the amount of smell that they have. As far as cheetah go, I haven't spent a huge amount of time with cheetah, so I'm not really sure if they have a very strong smell. I do know that they clean themselves fairly fastidiously as well. Now, obviously that has benefits for disease as well, but it definitely makes a difference, I think, to the amount of smell that they have. Now, somebody who has got a tremendous sense of smell, and combined with his tremendous fashion sense always smells good, is Scott Dyson. Here we are with the Nkuhumas still. We remain. They, as you can see, are in a state of high anxiety. They hardly know where to look for all the excitement that they feel. You can see that the tension in the air here is palpable. Anything could happen at any stage. Look at them. Just poised for action. Surely about to leap up and savage something, some unsuspecting creature in the woodland here. That is obviously completely untrue, everybody. They are not likely to do anything at all whatsoever, at least, I would say, for the and if it passes off a path like this and goes off into the bush, you're really going to struggle to find it. Really, only experts like Herbert are going to be able to successfully track and follow and track a leopard. So if you're learning to track, Herbie will also tell you that rhino are difficult, and they are if you're going to find them regularly, because what they do is they go off towards a termite mound, they graze around the termite mound, up and down over their own tracks. It's very difficult to pick out a direction from that termite mound. But if you're learning tracks around a mud wallow, they're the most perfect things to learn with, because rhino drag their feet, they don't lift them up like elephants do, and they drop off bits of mud where they're going. And so if you're a novice, tracking a rhino can be tremendously satisfying at this time of the day, because quite often you'll find them just grazing and sort of moving towards the ridge crests. And so those would be the easiest ones to track. I did hear a wonderful story of a chap called Richard Sewella, who was is a cantankerous fellow, absolutely phenomenal tracker. And he and the late, great Wilson Masia, who was a very famous tracker here, once had a roaring argument about whether a particular scuff in the dirt, and I don't mean a full track here, I literally mean a scuff, was a monkey or a porcupine. And they had a huge argument about it, and so the chaps watching them said, listen, if you want to sort this argument out, follow it, see if you can find it. And they tracked a porcupine into its burrow for about 2 hours, and eventually Richard Sewella was proved correct. And I don't think he ever forgot that incident. Now, something like that would be almost impossible for someone like me to do, and even harder than trying to follow something like a leopard. But, the guys in this area have perfected the art of tracking leopards because, of course, ecotourism in the Sabi Sands in particular, and in some of the other reserves around here, has been largely built around the leopard. Up in the Mara, they've got the Great Migration, they've got the huge prides of lions and the massive clans, they've got the cheetah. But the one thing that they don't manage to see nearly as often as we do are the leopards. And in fact, it is the leopard, I think, that draws the most people down to the Sabi Sands every single year. And so you can imagine how good the trackers around here have got at following leopards. Now, Monkey Farmer, you're wondering about aggression, and I'm going to give you the speech again. You've obviously not heard my speech, Monkey Farmer, and I apologize to those of you who have heard it before. You say, which species show the most aggression around us? I don't use the word aggression unless I absolutely have to, I mean in the wildlife context, I don't mean in the human context. The reason for that is that I do not believe that any animal is born by nature aggressive. Aggressive meaning something that will push home an attack for no apparent reason, in an angry way, and especially towards human beings. I don't believe that any of the animals out here are naturally aggressive. I think they go about their lives, and if they need to be aggressive for protecting themselves, then that's exactly what they will do. And so when you say which animals are the most aggressive, a much better question is which animals are you likely to irritate to the extent that they will become aggressive? Which animals are most easily irritated to the point of aggression? And I suppose a buffalo bull could be considered something like that, and I suppose an elephant as well on foot could be considered something like that. A lioness with cubs would also be something fairly, potentially dangerous to track, and likewise a leopardess. I just saw a bird hopping around there. No, never mind, we won't sit with the camera. A leopardess with a cub could also be quite nasty. But the point is that animals, contrary to popular belief, are pretty predictable. And if you predict, or if you can put yourself in their place on seeing us, you can often predict what they're going to do. So, for example, if I'm tracking these lions, they see me, yes, even me at 5 feet and 8 inches, they see me as a threat, as a predator, as something that need to be afraid of. And so their response to me would normally be to get up. And if you are faced with a threat, most of the time, most of us, except for those of us with a small screw loose, will move away from that threat, because we don't, unless we're in a sort of testosterone-fueled rage, choose to engage every threat we meet, or every threat that we come across. And so what these animals do is move away. And if you get them to the point that they feel cornered, like they cannot get away from you, then they will push home an attack. And it's exactly the same. You can imagine being set upon by an intruder in your kitchen and left with no option. No matter how small or frail you are, you will eventually attack. And that's what animals do out here. Now, Dawn, you're saying, but why am I saying that the vegetarians are the most aggressive? Well, it's because the aggression is not based on hunger. It's, as I've been explaining, based on fear. They are fearful of us. And elephants and buffalo have a long, long history with human beings. They are bigger than any of these animals, of course. And so what that means is that their history with us has made them very afraid of us, tremendously afraid of us. They know that we have, well, I suppose over the years, used their flesh and their skin for our own purposes, and that's made them afraid of us. I don't mean because they think we're going to use them to make shoes, but because they have a history of us trying to knock them off. And so that's why they can be more aggressive, if you like, or more potentially dangerous. So aggressive and dangerous are two of the words I try to avoid when describing wildlife, because I don't believe that any animal is inherently dangerous or inherently aggressive. Of course there are exceptions, but most of the time you will find animals react in a relatively predictable fashion, in the same way that, well, probably more so than human beings do, and most of the time they are not dangerous. They are potentially dangerous. If you irritate them to the point of aggression, they will become dangerous. So that's my speech that everybody has to hear. I'm sorry about that for those of you who've heard my speech before. Now, Mandy, you're wondering about how many lions there are in the Nkuhuma Pride here. You used the term clan. Clan, of course, would strictly use for hyena, but you'll find, Mandy, that lions really don't care if you call them a clan or a pride, so I'm going to let it go. You can call this the Nkuhuma clan. I quite like that, actually. So there are 5 lionesses in theory. There are 6 sub-adults. 6-year-old, no, not that many. Hang on, let me just check that. I have got it written down with me as we speak. I'm just going to quickly check, because I don't want to tell you a lie. I haven't seen them for so long. Let me just do a quick searchy. Come on, internet. I've got it written down on my phone. Anyway, 5 lionesses. At least 2 little, or there were 2 very little ones, and now I think there's only 1 of those left. And then by my reckoning, there should be 6 others. Here we go, I have it. No, not quite, almost. Here we go, now I've got it. Yeah, 6 sub-adults, and they were born between May and July last year, and then the 2 cubs born somewhere around, I think, about 3 months ago. There were also 2 cubs born in August, and so in theory there could be 5, 11, 13, 14, but I think we're missing 3 of those. I think there are 11 lions here. Anyway, this pride's gone from being a very small pride of 5 up to a fairly substantial pride now of 11. Thank you, Peyton, and many others, for saying that you enjoy it when I make my little speeches. That's very kind of you. I shall continue making them, but not too often. Sorry, before we go to Steve, look at that little cub coughing. Horrible. Anyway, while we try and figure out what's going on here, let's go across to Stivovo. I have no doubt he's got a tree to show you. Well, we have not left, of course, the nincompoomas. Here they remain, fast asleep, not doing a great deal. Well, one of them's rolling over, everybody. Try and hold on to your seats. It's getting really exciting now. Oh, it's rolled all the way over. Good heavens. Can you believe it? Well, take care. You say, how can anything sleep with a limb sticking up? Let me tell you something, take care. Lions can sleep with their limbs sticking up, but I've got to tell you, I've known some human beings who can sleep remarkably, and in just about any position whatsoever. The most talented sleepers that I have ever met are guides or rangers. What happens is that they come through the gates to these reserves, and they immediately develop a disease known as sleeping sickness. Now, whether it is passed on to them by a tsetse fly, I cannot tell you, but they are imbued with a sense of tiredness permanently, and also a sense of enormous self-importance. And the two combine to make them able to sleep absolutely anywhere. I have seen them sleeping in vehicles at sightings before. I've done that myself, in fact, by mistake. I have seen them sleeping under tables in bomas from time to time. I have seen them sleeping standing up at meetings. So they are able to sleep in a variety of positions. I have also met people who can sleep sitting in this sort of position. I knew a lady once who could sleep in the lotus position. So I think human beings are particularly good at sleeping with their limbs in the air. So I recommend to you that you try it yourself, and you might be very lucky one day. The worst story I can tell you about that, of course, these lions do absolutely nothing at all, is when I was imbued with the sleeping sickness disease, and I took a game drive, and we were sitting, in fact, with lions not much dissimilar to these ones, and I'll show you how I was sitting. I was sitting in the vehicle, and of course behind me there was this rack of seats, and on the rack of seats there was this kind of there was a bar, like a metal pole, a metal piece of piping, and I used to think I was very clever because I'd sleep with my hand like this, because you see, you can't see my eyes, so I could be fast asleep, and I'd say something stupid like, "Let us allow nature to speak for herself." And then I would say nothing, and I would fall asleep quietly like this, until one day I was sitting like this, and my elbow detached from where it is now, and my head went bang, and I woke up with an enormous sort of welt on the side of my head, and everyone knew that I had been fast asleep. It's a vehicle coming, don't worry. Anyway, that's my sleeping story. There's another vehicle coming through. Yesterday was just a little worried because we've left the drone not far from here, and he was worried perhaps that an elephant was going to come and kick it. Sheila, you ask a good question, and it was a pretty easy one to answer. You say, how do we recognize different prides? Sheila, we recognize different prides by the areas that they live in. And so if you're not particularly familiar with an area, you'll learn which lions are which just by, the territories that they keep, because they are highly territorial. The other way to do it, of course, is just by recognizing the individuals. Now, in fact, the woman talking to me in my ear this evening, Nicola Austin, has a remarkable ability to recognize a lion from the second time she's seen it. Some people are able to do that. I'm not. I don't recognize the difference. They all look relatively similar to me. But some people can literally just recognize animals the second time they see them from their slightly different individual looks. But basically, with a pride like this, if you see lions in this area, you know it's going to be members of the Nkuhuma Pride, even if it isn't the whole pride. Now Ellie, 7 years. Oh, no, Ellie, I think that's not your name, Ellie, 7 years. Your name is Ellie, and you are 7, I imagine. Well, Ellie, 7 years. Lions have spots on them when they're born. And those spots that you're looking at there are on the youngest lion. You see that? Now, those spots will eventually almost completely disappear. Sometimes they disappear entirely. At other times they don't. At other times they will remain into adulthood for a little while. And so if you look from lion to lion here, you can see some of them have got a few spots and some don't. Now, why do they have those spots? Well, the answer is because when they are very little, they are hidden inside thick bushes. And inside those thick bushes, what you will find is that if they are that color, just like a leopard, the light helps them to be camouflaged. And then when they get big, they move around in the grasslands, and in those grasslands, it helps to be this tawny color that they are now, because they don't live in the thick bush anymore. I just need to try and help somebody get to this sighting, but my radio is not working, so I might have to just give them a little bit of a yell. While I do that, let's head across to Scott Dyson, who has found a predator of the leaves. Nkuhuma Pride. There is that horrible raking cough that little thing's got. Isn't that awful? RZR, you're wondering how much those cubs weigh. I think that little thing there probably weighs in the region of 12 kilograms or so, which is about 26 pounds, 28 pounds. That would be my guess. Not very big, but really a dreadful raking cough, hacking cough. So that's a little bit sad. Now, of course, we do know that in the Kruger National Park, bovine tuberculosis can be a real killer for lions. It doesn't necessarily, it doesn't wipe them out quickly. It possibly shortens their lives slightly, but if they get malnourished, if they're not eating properly, and if there's a drought, for example, then it really can take hold. And obviously, just as with human beings and any other animal around the place, the young and the old and the infirm are the ones who are taken by disease first. So you'll find that all of these lions are carrying bovine tuberculosis, but that they will live normal lives relatively unless they don't eat sufficiently. And so that little one is not necessarily about to drop dead. Well, Scarlett, you ask a very interesting question. You say, is there an intelligence difference between lion genders? Absolutely, Scarlett. Female lions are totally idiotically gormless. Male lions, massively intelligent. You know, you can give a male lion a complex calculus problem to do, and they will solve it in seconds. With these females, goodness gracious me, you couldn't make them add 1 and 1 accurately more than twice in a row. Scarlett, I am, of course, being entirely facetious and sexist as well. I don't think so. I'm just trying to think how we would define intelligence in lions. Lions generally, Scarlett, are not known for their brains. They are known by animal trainers, for example, people who have animals for movies and that sort of thing. I drove a chap once, he came on safari with me, had 2 wives. It was quite interesting. Anyway, that wasn't the story. The point is that he said that the lions he owned, and, you know, we could debate what the pros and cons of that until the cows come home, but the point was that he said the lions he owned were completely dumb. You could not train them. You could train 1 in 10 lions. Leopard, he reckoned, was about as clever as a dolphin. You can teach them just about anything, except they are completely wild, and you cannot tame a leopard. And they're always just got that edge where if they look at you sideways, you think, ugh, that's a bit dangerous. Lions, not so much. Now, Scarlett, the most important thing about that, of course, is it's really, and Shemama, you're also interested in the subject. The question is really, are they as intelligent as they need to be? And obviously they are, within reason. They are intelligent enough to follow each other on the hunt. We still don't understand fully the communication that goes on between Pride members during a hunt. And so while they might not be particularly clever from a human perspective, in that I don't think any of them is likely to write a great novel like Wuthering Heights, they are superb silent hunters, which we as human beings could never be. So in that point of view, from that point of view, they are much more intelligent than us. Male lions and female lions really are similar, I think. I mean, they have different roles within the pride structure, but they can both hunt in this kind of silent team, which I think is the mark of the intelligence that makes them as successful as they are. A cheetah are interesting because you can domesticate a cheetah. A cheetah is relatively easily domesticatable. They are far less likely to try and kill you than lions and leopards. And the great legend goes that Genghis Khan used to keep a stable of hunting cheetah, rather like you might keep hunting dogs if you were a lord in 18th century Britain or 19th century Britain, or indeed if you were very backward in 20th century Britain. Now, Linda, as far as they catch common colds like we do, yes, I imagine they do. I don't know if it's the same virus that would cause the problem for them, but I imagine there are a number of little sort of ailments that they get. Very few of them will ail them to the point that they can't move anymore. And remember, so many of our diseases come from the compact nature or concentrated nature in which we live. So diseases rush through a population and morph into much more virulent strains of themselves because we live in towns and cities and villages. They obviously don't. They live as they always have. Also, they eat everything they're supposed to. They are not prone to eating rubbish. They don't eat preservatives. They don't eat all sorts of things that the media likes to tell us is good for us, but isn't actually. And that means that their immune systems, unless they're not eating properly, are at optimal operation. And so they're able to fight off things like a common cold much faster than human beings, which generally eat absolute rubbish if we can, and also we stress ourselves far beyond what we think our brains have evolved to be stressed. If you look back at our Stone Age ancestors, for example, you'll find that they probably worked, in other words, they went looking for food, for about 3 or 4 hours of the day, and the rest of the time was spent on leisure or flirting with the opposite sex, or indeed with the same sex. And that was the kind of extent of the day. And so 3 or 4 hours of your day was relatively stressful, trying to find enough to eat. The rest of the time, it was really up to you to do what you felt like doing. And that's how we evolved. And of course, not too long from then, but we find ourselves now in these rather hectic lifestyles, which I have absolutely no doubt create enormous problems for our health. These animals don't have those. Crazy Legs, you're wondering if I've seen the sick cub before. No, I haven't. In fact, my first meeting of this cub was 2 days ago, when we had them with the zebra kill. And I'm afraid I didn't notice any coughing then. 1, 2... I think all 5 lionesses are here. In fact, well, Amber Eyes is here, so that is definitely the same cub. All right, Stivovo has found something that is flappy and feathery, and, well, I'll let you guess what it is. One or two of them getting up. Just beautiful stuff. Sorry about the noise of the drone. We'll go up a little bit. But as you can see, the lion's utterly unconcerned by the sound of the drone, which is marvellous. And there we are, sitting with him. Okay, and now we're going to go back across the drone. How's that? Is that working properly? There we go. Isn't that amazing? Look at them sleeping there. So content and happy. Oh, we can count them quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 underneath the bush there. 12 maybe? I think they're 12. Yeah, 12 is with the cub. Nikki agrees with me. Cub is number of. Isn't that wonderful? What an amazing view that is. It is an absolutely bizarre view. You can see this drainage system here. Very difficult for vehicles to get into.